Hi folks, and welcome back to Lotus Tech Talk. And you might have seen my video where I asked all of you what I should do with this sill. If I should replace the whole sill or if I should just put a piece on top of it here and patch it up. And I've got a lot of good comments and recommendations. So basically there were three groups of people that answered to me. There was the group that said replace the whole sill, which starts from here, goes all the way up to the front. Another group said no, only replace the top part here, but don't cut the new sill that you have. Just make a mold on the new one and then pour a new one in polyester or something like that and then stick it on. Now that is also an option. And the third group said no, just cut off a piece of the new sill you have and then stitch it on to that one. So these were all options. Now I actually was in a long time in doubt. There was one person actually who had done it, actually on an S1, and he said replacing the whole sill wasn't that difficult. So at the end, I finally decided to replace the whole sill. I think that's the best thing I can do. I went back to Lotus and I asked them the question. I said, why do you not recommend to replace the whole sill? And their answer was, well, it's economics. It just takes a lot of time, and time is money, so that's why we don't do it, because it would cost you 4 times the price of just repairing the tip. So, and because my time is unpaid time, because it's my hobby, I'm going to replace the whole sill. I haven't done this before, guys, so but I have a plan, and the plan is that I'm going to remove all the parts that need to be removed first. And that means the clamshells, it means the lower front fender, it also means the door and some other small parts. I may even have to remove parts of the dashboard fascia. I don't know yet. We'll see. And then I will start cutting up the sill into segments, into little pieces. But first I will have a look if there is any ducting or actual cabling inside. I don't think there is cabling, but there could be some ducting. And then I will start cutting it up in pieces, and I'm not going to use a grinder, but you'll see that how I'm going to do this. And then when that's done, we just need to clean up all the edges, and then we are ready to fit the new one. Sounds very simple. Now don't pick on me, guys, if I come back on the decision that I made earlier in the video, because while I'm going along I may be changing things. So let's start working it. So, first of all, I've placed the Lotus Elise on a higher position. Now, you can use a stand or whatever you want, but I'm using my trailer, and it's the perfect height for me, and I'm a shorty, so this is good for me, because now I can work all over the place on this Elise, and that's where I have to work, because I also have to work underneath, because there is the V-groove. We also have removed already the clamshell, the back clamshell, and we also removed the front clamshell. This is what you have to do, including the inner fenders that you normally have around the wheels. The next step to remove is this lower part here of this of the front right-hand fender. Now that's easy. There are actually, if you open up the door, and I'll show you that in a minute, there's one bolt there and there's 2 bolts underneath, and then this whole part comes off. Of course, you will still have to disconnect the cable here, but that's easy. Once you've got that off, then you can actually start removing the door. And the door is easy as well, because it only has 4 bolts that are holding the whole system into place. Once the door is off, then I have to remove the internal padding, this rubbery kind of leather look padding that you have on the door sill. We'll undo that one, and then I should be okay to go, unless I have to remove some stuff on the fascia of the dashboard, because it may be sitting under there. I've read different articles on that. Some say you have to, some say you don't. So the first thing we're going to do is actually to remove this front panel now. All right, so I'm going to start by removing this panel, but before I can remove the panel, I need to remove this mud flap, and that's bolted down with some Phillips screws. So I have to remove the wheel first to get access to it, and then we can continue. So let me jack that up. I already put blocks on the back of the vehicle so it can't slide back. So you have 4 screws to undo. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the mud flap. Those are plastic screws, so if they don't come out easily with a Phillips screwdriver, you can always grab them with some pliers and then turn as well. Yeah, because after a while they tend to wear out a bit. So now the mud flap is actually loose, and you can pull it out because it is with those little plastic inserts. Huh? All right, the next step is to disconnect the cable from the blinker light on the side, and it's just a clip you can undo. There we go. If you open the door, you will find a little access panel. You have to undo those two screws, and then you can take the panel out. And inside, you'll find a bolt to undo, and that allows you to take the side panel off. You have two more bolts on the bottom. And there are two holes in the bottom, and that's where you actually have to undo the bolt as well. So let me try that. That's one. And now we did the second one. And now I should be able to remove the panel. And it seems like it's still stuck a bit. There we go. So now we're going to remove the door, and I'm going to remove it from the sill, and that's this bolt, that bolt, and two more bolts on the bottom. That's all what you have to do to remove the door. Now, if your vehicle has electrical cabling or electrical windows, you will have to disconnect, of course, cabling that would go in here. Now, mine doesn't have it, so I don't have to worry about that. Now, don't forget, guys, there are shims in between, so make sure that you don't lose those, because you're going to need those when you put everything back. I might have to adjust the shims later, depending on the sill and if all the gaps are going to line up, but that's something for later. Now, they can be very tight. I already loosened them up. Now, the way I'm going to do this, and you can see the door is already falling down a bit. I'm going to remove the bottom ones first, and then I do the top ones. Now I'm going to place a piece of wood over here, so when the door is going to slide down, because I'm going to undo this, it doesn't really drop, right? Oh, there goes the sims. I'm going to leave that screw in so the sims don't fall. And I know where they're coming from. There we go. We've got it removed, and these are the shims that were fitted. These were the ones from the top, and you've seen that I left the bolt in on the top. I didn't pull it all the way out, so it was hanging on it, so I know they are coming from the top. These are the shims from the bottom, sorry. You know, I only have two here, and on the top I had three. So that's something to remember, and I will store them accordingly. So the next thing we're going to do is to take the light switch out. We'll remove the padding here. And one more thing, of course, is the bolt or the pin which is holding the door in place when you close the door. That we need to remove. But also, we'll have to remove this rubber, see? That's the rubber, and that is glued with, I should say, double-sided tape onto the sill. So you need to remove this very gently so you don't break it. Now afterwards we'll have to put it back up with new tape, but that's a minor thing. Now I'm trying to pull as close as I can to the actual sticking area. To remove the switch, just undo the Phillips screwdriver and then gently turn it out, and then you can actually disconnect the connector and you should be good to go. There we go. So let's undo the locking bolt or the locking pin for the door. That's easy. You just want to make sure that keep all the washers in place in the right order. You'll see that there is a little grooved in one of the washers, so that has to go in like so. So when you put it back together, don't forget. All right, and I have some parts in the back that I need to take out. In fact, there's a lot of parts in the back. So when you put it back, you have to make sure you do it exactly in the right order. Like so. So now we are ready to remove the doorstep trim. It's just a Phillips screw on the edge here. I already undid it a bit. And then of course there's a couple more screws there. And again, you have to undo it. It's not a big thing. The problem with these cars is that everything is glued. Well, I don't know if it's actually a problem, but it's sometimes a bit annoying. So undo those two, and normally this panel should be able to come out. So let's see if that is the case or not. And now you may have to pull on this a bit because this is all glued. There you go. You need to remove this panel, and it took me a while to figure it out. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 screws to undo, and then it's partially loose. Then you have to remove this protection shield from the speaker system, and there are 4 real screws, and it's fitted like this. So the 2 bottom ones are real screws, and the 2 top ones. The other ones are fake. You can see it in the back. They're just fake. It's just, for the show, let's say. Right. Then you need to undo the screws of the speaker, and then you can lift out the speaker. And in fact, the whole panel then becomes loose, and then you can start pulling it off. Now, of course, you can't remove the panel without disconnecting all the connectors. So that's the next step you need to do. And then remove little bit by little bit all the connectors or the cables, and then you will be able to get to the back of it. Getting to all these little pieces is not always easy, but the good thing is you don't need to connect anything, you see? It's all good to go. So I can leave all this in place. I don't need to do anything more than that. And the last thing to do is to undo those 2 screws right here, so I can actually lift out this panel. And then we should be all good to go. This is weird. Some screws are Phillips, some screws are not, are torque. I don't know why they're making such a big mixture of screws. It's really weird. I should be able to lift this whole thing out. There we go. Good. So guys, we removed all the parts we had to remove. You notice that the fascia was just a small instrument panel that I had to remove. That wasn't much really, just a couple of screws. It was a little fiddling. The trim here was glued onto the sill. That was a bit of pulling, but it's okay. The door went easy, everything went off quite easy. So now it's the moment of truth, and I guess you all been waiting for this by the time I'm gonna start removing this sill. Now, I am not going to use a grinder, but I will use a vibrating saw, because you have far more control, or at least I have far more control if I use this, and it doesn't make as much dust as a circular saw. So, see? You can even put your finger on it and you don't feel it. But it does cut quite good. Now, before I start cutting like a madman on this, there could be some ducting, there could be some tubing inside. And I'm going to cut a piece out on the top first, because I can feel it on the side. There's a hole, there is nothing there, and then we can have a peek inside. So let's do that first before we start cutting it up in segments. So I know that in this area, because I can put my hand in and I peeked in it already, there is nothing. So I'm going to cut a piece out here and then see what's inside and where I can cut and where I cannot cut. I don't see much. I see one tube all the way below, and that's all I see here, and it's all against the chassis, so that's good. We should be good to go. I was getting pretty close actually here. I gotta watch out a bit. So we're going, so I'm gonna cut it in segments. That will be the easiest way. And I just need to watch out for that one tube inside. But it's not on the edges, so I should be good. Now you can actually see the tube which is running over here, and that's the only tube we have, so that's not too bad. Just want to check. Now, trying to get the last pieces off that are actually attached to the aluminum body, because I didn't cut it all the way up to the aluminum part, not to damage it. I'm going to be using a different blade, and this is a very dull blade. You know, it's almost gone. In fact, it is gone. But I'm going to use this because that's going to help me protecting a bit the aluminum body. So I don't want to have it scratching the aluminum or something like that. So let me give that a try and see how that goes. See how it cuts off? And I do it little bit by little bit. And I'm going to try actually to cut actually in the bonding material and not all the way on the surface of the aluminum. It's not always easy, but it's worthwhile trying. The hard part is this sitting in a V-groove, so this is extremely difficult to get out and actually have the groove cleaned for the next panel to go in. Now I'm not pushing it very hard, because I don't want to damage anything inside. So later I will use some razor blades to clean that up. This area, guys, is a bit more tricky. I will have to cut it very gently on this edge because it's just sitting under the window frame, and this part is part of the window frame. So, and it's actually glued on top of the sill, which you can see it's going underneath. So I need to cut it along this edge, and then I will have to cut out the piece on the new sill to make it fit, because that's going to be the only way I can do this. There are really no other approaches for that. So let's see if we can cut this properly and Still going to be a lot of cleaning work to be done, but that's just the way it is. One of the more difficult areas is around the windscreen here, and I got to be very careful because all of this stuff is so closely glued together, and I don't want to cut inside the frame. So I'm going to do it a bit more careful here. So I'm still in the polyester of the outer sill, so let me try to go a bit deeper. There we go. So now you can see it. That's the inner part where I don't want to cut, the black part, and yeah, it's a bit tricky to do this. But you can see the gap, and this is the gap I'm going to try to cut in. There we go. So we got this off. That's good. Now I still need to get this part off. So now we need to do this piece here. We're going to try to do it the same way. Peeling it off. I'm not going to cut too deep, guys. Just little bit by little bit. All right. So as you can see, this is going to take a bit of time to clean it all up, but once it's all cleaned up, it will be ready for the new shell. All right, guys, this turned out to be a lot easier than what I expected. The sill came off quite easily, and to be honest, I did not have to dismount too much. A bit of the fascia, you know, the doorstep here, but for the rest, the clamshells were already off. So if you have them off already, then it's not a big job. I can imagine if you have to do this job and everything is still on the car, the clamshells are still on, then it takes you a bit longer. But this took me about an hour and a half to get this where it is now. I started cleaning up certain of these little areas. There's still a lot of little areas to be cleaned up, like on the bottom here. You know, all this stuff still needs to be removed. But this is what I will do next this afternoon. I think it's going to take me another 2 hours to clean it fully up. But for the rest, this was very, very easy, and I think everybody can do this. I'm happy I did it, and I think I would have spent the same amount of work in trying to fix the sill here. So yes, thank you for viewing, and in my next video, you will see how we put it all back together. So, hope to see you then, and have a great day. And I have to get dinner because I'm starving, and if I'm starving, I get a bit itchy. Bye-bye.